Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. We'd like to go ahead and call the Finance Government Operations Committee, FGOC Committee meeting to order at this time. I am Supervisor Otto Lee, the chair of this committee, along with Vice Chair Supervisor Susan Ellenberg. With both supervisors present, we already have a quorum. So moving to the second item, public comment. This is the item reserved for members public to address the committee on items not on this agenda. Let's see, Clerk, would you let me know how many speakers we have for public comment, both here and online?
We currently do not have speakers on Zoom or in chambers.
I give it 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Still 0?
Still 0.
Okay, moving to item number 3, approve consent calendar and changes to committee's agenda. Supervisor Ellenberg, I have the following changes to the agenda. I'd like to add item number 9 to consent. Item 9 is a report from TSS, the Technology, Services, and Solutions Department, relating to departmental and county-wide information technology projects. And I'd like to also defer item 11 to next month's FGOC meeting based on the request from staff to ensure that last-minute changes are being made to ensure county is in compliance with Ordinance Code A36 and California Government Code Section 26110. Item 11 is the recommendations relating to corporate sponsorship, marketing, and advertising program. And Supervisor Ellenberg, do you have any other additions to the agenda?
I don't, but I would like to just make a brief comment, really an acknowledgement on item 9, which is the semi-annual report from TSS. Mostly, I want to extend appreciation and thank you to TSS for the really significant good work recently, including the recent launch of the new .gov website in October. I hear that was just a little bit of a lift. I also want to just highlight that our documented processes and procedures to implement the California automated welfare system are now being used as a model by other counties that are migrating to the system. And I just always want to take opportunities to note where our county is being recognized for leadership and innovation. Certainly looking forward to ongoing projects to modernize our external platforms that I know will enable us to connect more effectively and efficiently with constituents and be able to improve our service provision. So just thank yous all around. And I'm happy to second your motion for the consent calendar with the amendments that you recommended.
Great. All right. And there's a motion and seconded. So before I move on, let's see. Any members of the public would like to speak to the consent calendar items?
We currently do not have any members in chambers or on Zoom.
All right. Go ahead and close the public hearing, Clerk. Let's take a vote.
Vice Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
And Chairperson Lee?
Aye as well. Moving to item number 4, report from the Office of the County Executive relating to implementation of Management Audit Division recommendations. And to present this items is our County Exec, James Williams.
Yes, good afternoon. We were asked to come with an early initial update on implementation of a subset of the audit recommendations related to the Harvey Rose audit of the Office of the County Executive. We provided a report with our current initial update. I think the most significant things are, one, for the first time in a while, we actually have a published list of specific assignments for deputy county executives. And second, we are moving forward with looking at reorganization of the Office of the County Executive. Those are current ongoing internal conversations in the office. But the one thing that we're able to share right now publicly is that we plan to bring forward a recommendation to move the Office of Supportive Housing out as a separate department. And we'll be updating FGOC further as those internal conversations progress. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you, James. So at this point, do we have any public would like to speak on this item?
We currently do not have speakers in chambers or on Zoom.
Okay, now go ahead and close the public hearing. First of all, James, thank you for answering the questions from our office. I'm really hoping that we could bring some tangible updates and a rough draft of the entire restructuring of the office. I guess we'll be at the March FGOC meeting. And is this something that you'll be able to do at that time?
Yes.
Okay, great. And yes, Vice Chair Allenberg, do you have any questions, comments?
I don't. I appreciated the report, and I'm really excited about the reorg, and particularly what I hope it does for yours and Greta's time.
Thank you.
All right, motion to receive the report.
So moved.
I'll second it. Let's take a vote.
Vice Chairperson Ellenberg
Yes.
and Chairperson Lee.
Aye as well. Report having been received. Moving along quickly today. Yes, we are already at item number 5. Report from Facilities and Fleet Department and Behavioral Health Services relating to behavioral health facility expansion efforts and progress. And I believe today we have Key Lee, our Deputy County Executive, along with who is with us from Fleet and Services.
Hi, Dave Barry,
Oh,
Chief
hi,
of
Dave.
Planning from Facilities and Fleet.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, supervisors. This report is not substantially different from the one from October 19th. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. Anybody in the public like to speak on this item?
We do not have any speakers on Zoom or in chambers.
Great. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Supervisor Allenberg, do you have any questions on this one?
Yes, some comments. Thank you, Key, very, very much. I appreciate this report, and yes, while I understand that there was overlap between what was presented on Tuesday and today, I appreciate the call out here of specifically the infrastructure-related report that didn't make it into the extended conversation that we had on Tuesday. So I want to confirm first, I acknowledge and understand that there might not be updates every month, and I had asked for any updates to be redlined. And since there's nothing redlined here, should I assume from that that there are no changes from last month?
Yes, no changes from last time.
Okay. This morning at Public Safety and Justice, we looked in the alternatives to the quarterly report on the status of county diversion efforts. I realize I'm pulling an agenda from a different meeting, and the clerk has copies for anybody that wants one. One of the updates, the last update, came from the Behavioral Health Department, and we were talking this morning about the number of people and the length of time in which they're on the JAC list, and that one of the factors impacting that is provider capacity. So what I want to understand is when we're looking specifically through the public safety and justice lens, so people that are in or around our carceral system that have the potential to be diverted, these different opportunities, crisis residential, Evans Lane, forensic assertive community treatment, full service partnership, intensive outpatient, are those a separate category just for justice involved patients, clients, or when we're talking about the building expansion, is it inclusive of the needs of this population?
Thank you, Supervisor, for that question. The report that goes to PSJC regarding our capacity and wait times for diversion programs. I just want to note that first, it includes both outpatient treatment programs, so services,
Sure.
capacity at a full service partnership, and almost to a person, all individuals who are participating in formal diversion programs coming from the courts, coming from the jails, need some type of intensive outpatient program like that. In addition to that, they may need some form of immediate placement in a physical setting.
Right.
And that setting can be a shelter, congregate or non-congregate, a treatment facility of various types. So that's that report, and for the next report, we're going to try to explain that more clearly, because I think it's a little unclear at this stage. So this report that we have at FGOC, it represents all of our efforts to increase behavioral health treatment facilities and temporary shelter facilities for all behavioral health clients overall. And per, I think, your request on Tuesday, we will look at trying to identify which facilities are specifically restricted for justice-involved populations or participating in jail diversion programs. And I think hearing the conversation from PSJC today, I think we will try to provide to you the inventory of settings by facility level, acute, subacute, community, residential, et cetera. And then try to explain and show the capacity and the waiting list associated, which is sort of like an inventory report, different than this report, which is all of the initiatives underway to expand.
Which is tremendous and exciting, and I really have only appreciation for that report, the report that's coming to FGOC. And what I'm trying to make sure of, and I think it's happening, and I'm just kind of getting to a place where my head is fully around it, is knowing that we've got this whole of county response right now to the public health crisis in mental illness and substance use disorders, that we are looking from every angle. And when we are trying to understand what our needs are, whether it's what the RAND study assessed or our own assessments, that we are looking as well at the needs that we're finding specifically around diversion from jail, so that we're not bottlenecking people there, and how do they fit into the places. So I'm trying to bring those together, and I think it sounds like you understand and in fact are better articulating what I'm looking for than I am.
Yes, I should have been more concise. We, in looking at the opportunities to expand behavioral health treatment in temporary housing facilities, we are taking a whole of county approach. We are looking at all the populations and all the critical needs. And as you indicated, the RAND study reported that one of the complications or challenges is that while we might have a total number of facilities, certain facilities do not have the capacity, the wherewithal, the staffing, the experience to serve certain subpopulations, and justice involved is one of them. So we do have to expand all facilities with a special attention to one of those, the justice-involved population, which has some additional needs.
Right, and we had a great example this morning regarding BAP, where somebody that's coming out of jail and meets the criteria for an LPS conservatorship may have to wait for a space at Barbara Aaron's because there are people there that we cannot step down to, is it subacute or adult residential? BAP is subacute. Or
BAP is acute.
BAP is acute. So to step down from there, so building at that lower level would actually help us get more people out of jail, because we're going to take them at BAP even if nobody else will.
Right. Yes.
All right. It is all a very fascinating Tetris puzzle, and I look forward each month to seeing how we are filling in more pieces. So thank you very much, and thank you for continuing to walk through it with me.
Thank you. If you have no, well, actually, yeah, if you have no more further questions, I would just ask to have a motion to receive the report.
So moved.
I'll second it. I'll go and take the vote.
Vice Chairperson Ellenberg
Yes.
and Chairperson Lee.
Yes, as well. Okay. And moving to item number 6, which is quarterly report from the Facilities and Fleet Department and the Office of County Exec relating to the food services at the county facilities. And this time, I believe we have our Jeff Draper, our Director from Facilities and Fleet, and also Michelle Seaton, our Director of the Office of the County Executive today. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Supervisors. You have our report. There has been some activity and looking for different food services at our different campuses, and I think we're ready to take questions.
All right, good. First of all, do we have any members of the public who'd like to speak?
We currently do not have any members in chambers or on Zoom.
Great. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Yes, Supervisor Ellenberg, do you have any questions?
It's interesting to go from this massive operation of identifying and building out mental health facilities to something that I know must feel very, very small to you and certainly relatively less significant. But this is a really important piece for employee culture, mood, feeling of being in a welcoming place and having places and reasons to gather. And I fully understand all of the challenging economics of running a cafeteria in a building here. I still think, and maybe you need somebody that's not you, because you are very busy, to be able to just knock this out, get us carts, figure out if we can, again, go back and rethink a reentry program, bring back the farmers market that is doing so beautifully well at VMC on Wednesdays. Maybe we can get them on Thursdays. With all of the big things going on, I understand why this isn't important, but I want us to understand that though it's small dollars, I think it can have a really big impact on morale in this building. And frankly, I think that we owe it to the 1,000+ employees that are here to have places to eat and drink and gather on campus.
I think we agree with you, Supervisor.
Yeah, and I would just add, we definitely agree that we want to be able to provide these options. We are looking at farmers market and other things. There's a challenge right now, which is in the wake of the pandemic, it's a twofold challenge. One is that several floors of the building are temporarily vacant, so that reduces the number of folks here. And second, there's a number of departments located here that have some significant telework. And so the cumulative impact of those two things means that when we pre-pandemic reliably had 1,400 folks working in this complex, we don't have that. And so that just changes the options available in terms of farmers market and cafeteria and coffee carts and other things. So we're pursuing it. I'm very optimistic on at least the coffee cart option. We got one food truck in. We're going to continue to expand that, and we're going to continue to work on some other things. And then, of course, we will end up, as those floors get repopulated with some higher percentage, number of folks here as well. But I just have to name that because it is a difference from before that's significant on the economics of what makes sense for folks coming here. And of course, there's a big difference between us and, say, the VMC campus where everybody's on site and there's a lot of folks. So.
Thank you.
But we all, those of us who work in this building are all on the same page about this.
I'm glad to hear that. Do we have a timeline of when the floors that have been, I was going to say evacuated, that's not right. The departments that have moved out, when those will be filled?
It'll ultimately be a several years project because those floors have to be redone. I don't know if your elevator has stopped and opened up on the assessor's floor, for example.
Looks like an airline hangar.
Yeah, so those projects, haven't even been put out to bid, the actual construction piece of those. So we're talking about, realistically speaking, at least I would say 3 years before people are in there. I'm seeing Jeff Draper nod his head.
All right, well, we shouldn't wait 3 years for coffee, so let's figure
No, the
something out.
coffee cart's moving forward now, just to be
Okay.
clear. Coffee cart's moving forward now.
Farmers
The
market?
RFI just closed. Farmers market's challenging for the dynamic I just said, because we have hundreds and hundreds of fewer folks.
Even
here.
with the jail, the courts, all of the buildings right around us?
We have a lot
Okay.
fewer people, yeah.
All right, that is all the time I shall spend on that, but thank you.
No, I'm glad to see that the coffee cart, something that we've discussed previously to move forward. I think even though we have less employees, but with the number of employees we have, that would still be important. Not that we can't get coffee ourselves, but I think it certainly is. There's a convenience factor in addition to the fact that any hours saving people from going outside to I mean, it's good for people to take a walk. Don't get me wrong, but I think it'll be much more convenient for folks. And I think it would be a morale booster in many ways. And now, especially after COVID, people are back in the office, having people gathering in the coffee cart area. I think there's certainly networking and people seeing people, because a lot of times when we work in cubicle spaces, we become a little segregated too. So I think these are all good morale improvement that may or may not be measured on the profit side. So I just want to say thanks for pushing that forward. As for the food truck, I do have some questions regarding the difficulty of it. It says that we tried it with the Hilton Group guys, but they didn't want to do it because it wasn't very popular. I don't know. Do you think it's not that popular is because they didn't like the food being offered? Was the outreach was being done as well?
I think one of the things is if the same truck is on the site every day, that clients get used to that truck, and they may have some regular favorites, people that go out there and they just want to go to that food truck, but not everybody will go to the same truck every day. They want to have variety, and so we're also trying to expand opportunities to have other vendors on the site, and maybe not be there every day, but maybe we'll spread it out and see how that works and add that opportunity. I think that Michelle Seaton here from the CEO's office is trying that here. You had a successful food truck visit for one time, and now she's going to do a little bit more.
I mean, I'm just thinking like, hey, maybe Taco Tuesdays. I mean, something like that, right? So people can
This is what
remember, like,
happens.
this is one of those.
The board
this
is
happens.
just going to start
Yeah, come up
planning.
with ideas. I think it's a variety. We have such a diverse community. One of the best things living here, I tell people, is that the risk of gaining weight because of the amazing amount of good food that we have throughout the county. And so I see no reason why, with all different food trucks there, we should be able to bring that variety to our employees as well. So I think that's and then the other issue about this matching the county's nutritional guidelines issue. I know it's been very much debated back and forth, and we had this proposal we talked about this past Tuesday. Not so much loosening it, but really clarifying what that means. So there are cultural events, obviously that could be used for that, but at the same time, the guidelines is a guideline. It doesn't mean that we can only provide food under the guideline. It says that you have to provide food under the guideline equal to the amount of other food that may not meet the guideline, so we can provide both. So I think that's the issue, is having good alternatives being made available, not only the alternative of the according to guideline. I just want to make sure that that's clear to our staff so that we are not overly restrictive on what's being made available.
You're correct, Supervisor. We're not overly stringent in reviewing that. We usually review it with the vendor to see what they do provide. They typically have an offering that will meet our guidelines, but then they have other offerings to go along with
Exactly,
it.
right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to make sure, so it doesn't become a religion here that it has to eat this type of food or else you can't.
Right.
Okay, all right. And
I thought I was done, but just one more note. Is that all right?
No, please, go ahead, yes.
Our small business consortia, I wonder if there's value in reaching out to particularly the smaller ethnic chambers, because there may well be folks that are willing, without the guarantee of 1,000 customers, to come and set up their shop and wares here a couple times a week. Really, that's it, though. But
Well, currently, when we were looking for food trucks or coffee vendors, we're currently going off of the Department of Environmental Health's list. They are the ones who actually certify them to provide, food publicly. And so that's the list we run to. In terms of going to a consortium, we can certainly see what kind of outreach we could do. We'll work with procurement on seeing
Cool,
what's out
thanks.
there.
All right, good. Thank you very much. And may I have a motion to receive the report, please?
So moved.
And I'll second it. Let's take a vote.
Vice Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
And Chairperson Lee?
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks. Thanks.
Item number 7, I believe, is a Levine Act item. I'll let the clerk read the notice.
Correct. Item 7 is subject to the Levine Act. Any party or their agents and any participant who has a financial interest or their agents must disclose on the record a contribution of more than $250 made to a board member as described on page 3 of the agenda.
All right, thank you. And again, item number 7 is a report from the Facilities and Fleet Department relating to identification of parking spaces. The Wellness Wagging Program we utilize on a monthly basis. And Jeff Draper, still the Director of Facilities and Fleet. Go ahead.
Even since the last item, yes, sir. So we've been vetting locations with the Wellness Wagon. I think we've honed in on about 3 locations currently, and we have 1 more to look at. So once we get through that, it should be a fairly quick process to have them have a license to operate in one of or more of those locations.
Great, thank you. First, do we have any members in public doc to speak on this?
We do not have any members in chambers or on Zoom.
Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. I just want to say thank you so much for the continuing vigilance and work on this one, Jeff, and I certainly have a couple of follow-up questions. Has the HSSV indicated any interest on any of the sites? And if there are, if you could share?
Supervisor, I'm not sure I understood the question.
Oh, I'm
completely.
sorry.
I just couldn't hear you
Of the
quite.
sites that's been identified, did SSV ever come back to you and say, hey, these are the ones that would work, or this one doesn't, or you're still waiting for the response?
We're waiting for them to vet 1 more location, and then I think we'll be done with the vetting of locations.
Okay, great. All right. And I guess you're doing 1-year agreements, kind of more like a pilot first to see how it works, and then
Yes,
if it
yes,
works,
sir.
then
It
we
seems
can
the logical way to go for
Exactly.
both parties.
All right, good. That's all I have. Supervisor Ellenberg, any questions?
Nope.
Okay, and is there a motion to receive the report?
So moved.
I'll second it. Let's take a vote.
Vice Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
And Chairperson Lee?
Yes, as well. Thank you. Report's been received. And then I think we jump to item number 8. Report from the Management Audit Division relating to the Housing Choice Voucher Program. And to present this item today, we have Cheryl Soloff, our Management Audit Manager, along with Chevron Campbell, our Senior Manager as well. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yes, hello, I'm Severin Campbell from the Management Audit Division. And at the last month's FGOC meeting, we reported on the August 2023 management audit of the DEBS Employment Services. And in part of that audit, we had recommended that DEBS Director, the Office of Supportive Housing, work with the Housing Authority on facilitating CalWorks families' access to housing choice vouchers. We were asked to sort of provide follow-up information on how they could work together. Both the Office of Supportive Housing and DEBS had partially agreed with our recommendation. So in our follow-up memo, we kind of recommend 2 options, or sort of identify 2 options for further recommendation, further communication. One is for sort of providing ongoing process for sharing information on Housing Authority programs with DEBS and with the Office of Supportive Housing. Right now, the Office of Supportive Housing has sort of 3 memoranda of understanding in which they work directly with the Housing Authority. The Social Services Agency doesn't have as direct a relationship when it comes to CalWorks families. We understand that housing choice vouchers are a limited resource, but there is an example from recent times in which during the pandemic, HUD allocated emergency housing vouchers, and through the work of the Housing Authority, the Office of Supportive Housing, and DEBS, 150 CalWorks families were allocated those housing vouchers, and those are 10-year vouchers. The other one is to look at the existing case managers who work for the nonprofit, the community-based organization. So this is a very different program. It's the community-based organization provides housing support services through the Housing Support Program, which is a state CalWorks program, which gives 24-month rent subsidies to CalWorks families. So it's different from the housing voucher program. The case managers aren't focused on the housing voucher program, but housing choice vouchers. But in fact, they're a really valuable resource to CalWorks families in terms of helping them like get on the wait list or what they call the interest list at
I'm
this
sorry to
point.
interrupt. I don't know, are we supposed to be moving on the slide deck there? Are you planning to, because I saw it being put
I
on the
just-
front page. I know you're talking through it. I just want to make sure if it's referred to it, we should move along. I just want to make sure if anybody watching could, yeah, can we put that up on where you're speaking?
I'm-
I think it's page CalWorks, so I think that's page 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. Okay. So this is talking about the actual options. So the first one was what I sort of referred to, which is for them to define a formal process in which the Office of Supportive Housing, the DEB's Employment Services, and the Housing Authority routinely share information on housing choice vouchers so that CalWorks families, DEB's staff have that information to provide to CalWorks families and to have access to it. As I said, we know it's a limited list, limited access to the list, but there is a recent example of the emergency housing vouchers in which they had 150 families were able to get 10-year housing vouchers. The second one is about the community-based organization that works with CalWorks families for housing access. It's a different program. It's a state program. It provides 24-month rental subsidies to CalWorks families. But these case managers also work closely with these families and can be an assistance to assist these families in getting on the interest list for housing choice vouchers, to fill out the applications, to go through the paperwork process. And so we think that like sort of an ongoing training and information to these case managers would be a really important resource in terms of facilitating access. That's very much the summary of our memo.
Thank you. First, is there anybody in public who would like to ask questions on this item?
We currently do not have speakers in chambers or on Zoom.
Okay, good. So I actually do have a few questions that I'm always bothering me about the whole voucher program. I'm just going to ask some probably maybe dumb questions, and maybe you could enlighten me on the process. Obviously, we do not have enough vouchers to provide to every individual who would like to get housing, but we have this list. I know for a while, the Housing Authority managed a type of a waiting list for many, many years. And there's been concerns as to the transparency and who gets on the list and whatnot. And I do know that approximately a year or two ago, the Housing Authority has completely gotten rid of that long waiting list. And I've heard some grumbling about that issue. Is that something that you even touch upon at all, or that's just a bigger issue that you guys did not do the audit to cover that?
We did not answer that directly. We did look at input in our memo about what they call the interest list now, and but how people are drawn off that interest list, and we know nobody was drawn off that list, I think, in the last couple of years. So there isn't a lot of availability, but we don't have further information on that at this time.
How big is that list right now? Do you have any idea in terms of number of folks on the list?
I believe that there are about 19,000 housing choice vouchers allocated, and I believe that the interest list is maybe over 40,000. At least that was the information that we most recently had.
And this list, what I was told was that that early list has been removed. So I guess these 40,000 will be brand new applications.
I didn't hear that either. I'm sorry.
The 40,000 interest that you mentioned, these are like 40,000 folks trying to get the vouchers. Is that what you're talking about?
That is our understanding, but as I said, we only have just that basic information on the process of the list.
Okay, yeah, it might be something I need to just directly address that with the Housing Authority to learn more on that issue. Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Supervisor Ellenberg.
Thank you for the report. Did you engage directly with the Housing Authority in putting together this report for information or insight?
No, we did not. We worked through the Office of Supportive Housing, who has the direct relationship with the Housing Authority, but we have not had any direct contact with Housing Authority themselves.
So Supervisor Lee, as the chair of this committee, I would invite you to consider maybe inviting Preston Prince from the Housing Authority to perhaps do a presentation or provide a response or some input to the management audit, because I think it's not an effective conversation to
Yes.
speculate and wonder
Thank you,
about the
yes.
Housing Authority without having them
Oh,
in the
I think you're
room.
absolutely right. So I don't know if this is the right place. I'll check with county exec. What would be the best way to request information from our housing authority to further educate me and our board the work of the voucher program of the housing authority?
The board absolutely has the ability to ask the Housing Authority to come and present if that's what you wish, or to connect with the management auditor and provide them with the information, or to provide written material or information, whatever your pleasure is. But the Housing Authority is a separate but affiliated entity to the county.
Great. Yeah, if that is appropriate, James, if I could ask Cheryl to connect with the housing authority to see if we could learn a little bit more about the greater situation regarding the voucher program, how that's being administered, some of the numbers, like how out of those 40,000 individuals that was listed on the report, that's a lot of people that needs housing. How are those being prioritized? How did they get on the list? Because I remember them telling me how there was an old list that they have no longer used, and whether did they get this new list based off of the old list?
Supervisor
and
Lee.
how that works.
If I could just offer
Please.
a slight tweak on that, rather than asking our auditor to find that information and report back to us, might we not ask her, Cheryl, sorry, to deliver the audit to the Housing Authority, and either through the county executive or one of our offices, we could invite them to provide a written response, if they're willing to do so, to the audit, and then come to a meeting
Present
at
it
your
to us, sure.
discretion and present to us so that we
Yeah,
can
so
ask
maybe that's a
questions
two-step
directly.
process. Yeah, let's just do that. I think that's a great idea. So if we could just ask you to work with the housing authority, and then we'll request them to provide that written report. Is that something I should make it into motion, James?
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate, and I think it would be good to include, when they come and make that presentation, I would want to make sure that Office Supportive Housing is present as well and
Right.
able to comment on those interrelationships
Great.
as well.
So I would make a motion to direct administration to connect with the Housing Authority, provide them with a copy of the management audit, and invite them to submit a written response and to attend an FGOC meeting that's conveniently scheduled, blah, blah, and that we should also have both OSH and I would think SSA, maybe the CalWorks folks, since they are directly involved in this, attend as well. They may both provide information and ask questions themselves that we could all get answered. So that's my
Yes.
motion.
And I definitely second that. Thank you very much for coaching this motion and to help bring more transparency and understanding on this process. Thank you. I'll take a
Vice
vote.
Chairperson Ellenberg.
Yes.
And Chairperson Lee.
Yes, as well. Thank you very much, Cheryl. Thank you. And thank you, Chevron. Moving to item number
10.
10.
9 has been put on consent, so now we're moving to item number 10, which is a report from TSS relating to the causes and implications of uncollected revenue within the TSS budget, assessment of the adequacy of TSS billing system to recover this money, and evaluate whether the general fund allocation designated for TSS uncollected revenue is better utilized for other purposes. Here to provide, I believe, is this Nina Diamato, the Chief Information Officer? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Yes, hi.
No. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you now.
Thank
Yes.
you. Apologize.
Please proceed. Do you have any presentation or on this item?
Well, actually, I thought I could answer specific questions. I'm always concerned about the IT chargeback model. It can bring you down some rabbit holes, so I just want to clarify any pressing questions.
Okay, great. First of all, do you have any questions, Suarez Ellenberg? Yeah, you want to go ahead and ask the questions first? I want to hear from public.
Happy to hear from the public first.
All right, anybody in public would have any comments on this item?
We currently have no members in chambers or on Zoom.
We'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Supervisor Ellenberg, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciated both the audit and the report back, and I just want to make sure I understand when we're billing internally. What does that really mean in terms of gained or lost revenue? I understand and definitely empathize with the position that it would be unrealistic to expect a reduction in revenue while maintaining the same level of service. But as one entity, do you get revenue directly from another department that funds your department?
That's right. That's exactly right. If you zoom back, TSS's budget is an internal service fund. So our budget consists of portions of departments that we serve. And so consequently, we project services based on consumption and demand from prior data, and we create service rates. And the service rates are sometimes within, 5% or 4%, but we are gaining maturity as it relates to right-sizing and costing out the IT services that support all of the counties. So that's around 60 departments. So revenue might be the wrong word as it relates to an ISF, because that's more of a private sector term, but their budgets fund the services, of which that's about $345 million.
And from a county perspective, it's all the same. It's internal money moving away from one department
Yes.
to another. So, and I'm not making a recommendation right now, I'm just playing this out to understand it. So we could have a model whereby departments were not charged for TSS services, and TSS was just provided directly with a budget. Megan, I see that. I'm not recommending it, I'm just trying to understand, so don't worry. Fix your face, as they say.
The important thing to recognize, though, is it allows us to, by charging the services to the relevant departments, right, because there's all these different revenue streams.
Right.
And we have departments that are not general fund. We have some departments that are zero general fund. We have departments that are a mix of things. We're then capturing the appropriate reimbursements for TSS based on the cost of services provided, then allocated out to all of those different revenue streams. So for example, in the case of, say, SSA, where you have significant state, federal money reimbursement coming in, that becomes then reimbursable as part of their charges, right, so to speak, because it's being allocated that way. So it would not make sense to just have, money go from the general fund straight to TSS, even though obviously there's significant general fund transfers that end up right in TSS from the general fund departments.
And it's certainly compelling, particularly when it is not general fund dollars, although it also means that whatever those specific funds are from a state fund for SSA, those funds are not going directly to services, but are going to the TSS administration. Would those costs be administrative costs regardless? Not money we would otherwise spend on programs or services?
The vast majority of there is an overhead, certainly, but which is for the maintenance of, the department and the system, but most everything that we're talking about is, are services that are being billed to the specific department. So it's for the number of computers or systems they have, or the specific software that they're utilizing, right? So for example, we have a extraordinarily expensive piece of software called HealthLink, right? The hospital funds that and funds a number of positions in TSS that support and maintain that system. So you're right, there's a piece of Nina's salary, for example, that's in there as overhead, but that's pretty small. The vast majority of FTE at TSS are directly supporting the systems and
The hospital's an interesting example because they're paying us, but we are investing 300 million plus in the hospital. So that's still our funds coming back to us.
Well, but it gets baked into all the rates, right? So and this is not the only ISF.
So
I mean,
what-
we have a ISF for workers' comp. We have an ISF for our liability fund, and those rates are calculated, based on claims history to different departments. So we have a number of these, and there's a whole methodology that is governed by rules promulgated by the state controller's office. They audit these. They have to be done. The calculations have to be done in a particular way. You can't. Obviously, in any given moment of time or any given fiscal year, there's variances, but over time, you can't be accumulating surplus or deficits in your ISF. It's supposed to be intended to be a chargeback model. And the controller cares a lot about that, of course, because of exactly the things we were talking about, like the SSA, state reimbursement, or things like that.
That's really helpful and interesting, and it looks like the auditor has gone, but maybe you could just remind me, what problem were they trying to solve? Why was it of concern to Harvey Rose that you perhaps are overcharging?
Well, as I noted, services are developed based on consumption and demand, and with technology, there's a lot of variables going on.
Sure.
There's huge contracts and there's smaller contracts, so we don't want to overcharge a smaller department as compared to, say, the hospital or SSA. So we want to make sure there's equity involved in the billing. To your point, last year, we rolled over around 8 million, and so the projections were over. We thought people would consume more, so when we developed the budget, we were at 8 million over. And that goes straight back to OBA, and they distribute it out appropriately. So that might be the overage that caused the
But we don't lose that 8 million, it goes back into our system.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think another way to put it is, as I said earlier, in any given year, there may be variances. Over a period of time, those are not supposed to exist. And so at any given moment in time, when Harvey Rose is looking at things, they may notice variances. And, over a period of time, those are evened out. So from a longer term aggregate perspective, it's really not an issue, even though at any particular snapshot you look at, you're going to see variances.
Got it. I appreciate both of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I do have a few questions. One is about how you talk about this so-called overestimation, the over budget. I'm trying to understand it better, so maybe James, you could help me on this. On the big picture of things, when we have positions that is not filled, at the end of the year, those become a bit of a kind of a fund balance that will be able to be used, right, at the end of the fiscal year to be spent on other things, for example. Is it similar in that respect for TSS budget, where if you don't spend, say, $8 million, does that $8 million becomes funds being put back into the general fund, or
Yeah,
does that become a services that goes?
Yes. So every department, has line items in their budget. So I'll give you an example of a department's budget I'm extremely familiar with, County Counsel's office, right? So you look at that budget unit, and there are specific lines
Right.
in that budget that are for TSS services. There's a corresponding amount of the exact same dollar amount that shows up in the TSS budget unit.
Correct.
And so in a perfect world, if your budget was, the projection was 100% spot on, which it of course never exactly is, but you know, when the fiscal year ended, on that county council line, you would see this was how much was budgeted, and the 100% of that was spent. And on the TSS budget, you would see the corresponding line that would say, this is how much revenue we expect from county council's budget, and we got 100% of that. But if we utilize less or different services, if we,
80%, right.
yeah, or and it's not based on their vacancies, to be clear. It's based on how many computers we have, how many cell phones we have, how many desktop phones we have, how many, you know, special, whatever things we used from TSS that year, right? We may overspend or underspend that particular line, and that'll show up again in the TSS budget as an overage or underage, right? So, you know, that happens, every single budget unit in the county has several line items associated specifically with TSS,
Right.
just as they do for the other internal service funds.
Right, so in that case, if you didn't spend the 20% on these TSS budget, that becomes a surplus.
That's right, so that would
in
show up as
your
fund balance.
Fund balance, right, exactly.
That would show up as fund balance
But how does
in the
that hurt
county
TSS
council.
though? Because they were expecting the revenue to come in, so if they don't get their revenue, what happened to them?
Well, they have to be balancing their budget. So if all of a sudden we, you know, that department, pick county council again, which is a general fund, primarily general fund department, said, you know what, we're not using any computers or technology for this year.
Right.
And we're getting rid of all our phones and all our everything, that would, then, you know, Nina would need to be paying attention on her end to say, uh-oh, I need to be reducing costs so that I stay in balance when my books close at the end of the year.
Right.
I'm going to need to hold some positions vacant. I'm going to need to stop spending on something else so that in aggregate, I'm not running over my appropriation, right? Because I was expecting that revenue. And when, you know, and we of course make, you know, this, when you see mid-year and year end, you'll see those massive F-85s with all those adjustments. Some subset of those adjustments are, you know, reconciling these types of line items across all the different budgets in the county.
Right. And so based on what we have seen right now, is the good news, I guess, is we don't have a over spending situation from our departments. That would be bad because that would be money that we don't have, and we'll have to find some ways to pay for it. But right now, basically, the good, I guess, in a way, it seems to be good news is the fact that our budget offered for each department, they have been underutilizing the amount of TSS allowance they were given. That seems to be the takeaway. Yes, I'm just trying to get a big picture.
So OBA works with us, and we have a long lead time before we actually go to day one of the fiscal year. In all that time, and it actually starts right now, we begin to develop service rates, and the service rates are based on historical data,
Correct.
whatever new technology investments that you'd like to pursue. And so our budget on day one is built from all of the service forecasting. So if we're a little bit off, 4 or 5 million, we are locking up the other departments' budgets. And I believe that that is probably the impetus of the question. It's probably not good to lock up our clients' budgets.
Right.
So through the, 5 months in, we realize you're really not going to use as much as you thought you may use a year ago. So mid-year, that's an adjustment. And then as we move through the fiscal year, we get to the last day of the fiscal year, and then OBA essentially corrals the money and distributes it back out.
Well, and I'll say it runs both directions. So,
That is true.
Even if in aggregate, there's a lot of departments that are underspending, there are some that are over. And there are always sometimes, off-cycle urgent kind of technology-related issues. For instance, there may be a patch or a critical upgrade that's needed to an existing software system in order to maintain functionality of that system. That happens mid-year. I would say that happens Nina would know better, but many times a year in different departments.
Right.
And so those are sometimes there wasn't budget set aside for that specifically. So it runs in both directions. So I would, even if in aggregate it's looking one way, when you go actually look department by department, it's both directions.
Okay, great. On the issue of the reimbursable expenses, if the item is reimbursable, we talk about hospital systems, if it turns out they actually have a higher spend on TSS budget, does it mean we could claim more funds from the state? or the
Yes, and
federal?
they do. They would, yeah. I mean, they build those in to then whatever revenue they're drawing down to the extent they can.
Right. So those type of overspending might not be as damaging to us because we actually get the money back versus if had it been individual units that's not reimbursable, that's where it could hurt us more, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think that's right at a high level of generality. I will say, it's complicated, right? Because certain revenue sources have caps, certain revenue sources have, you have to build it into subsequent years' fees. So, because they run on, an arrears basis. So, it's not a straight one-to-one, and it may not show up that way within the same fiscal year.
Okay, good. So basically, the way I see it is, in order to be better project the budget, you guys do have periodic, reevaluation, especially before mid-year, for example, see how the money's spending, readjust it before mid-year, and then through that projection, we'll get it to the end of the year, try to get as close as possible to what the real expenditure is, right? That seems to be the takeaway I'm getting. Yeah, no, I think that's all the questions I have on this issue, and thank you so much for the education on how this is being done, and let's make sure that if we could get those reimbursed, let's make sure we get those claimed on a timely manner.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly why we have it structured as an ISF, and like I said, this isn't the only one, and we have a lot of these kind of complex financial arrangements, and they're designed in order to help us maximize the drawdown of different types of revenue streams.
Yep.
But they require a lot of effort too, and there's a lot of rules around them, including a lot of rules around overhead, around claiming, around documentation, and all sorts of other things. And so I really commend the many, many, many dedicated fiscal staff across the organization. The controller's office, OBA, are the two obvious places, but in each of the departments, there are a number of staff who work all throughout the year on these reconciliations, and it's a big deal for us given the complexity of an organization the size of the county because of the very, very, very different types of revenue streams we're talking about that for many other governmental entities, it's just more, they may have multiple revenue streams too, but it's not at the level of complexity that we do running a hospital, running all of, social services and all of these other systems that we have.
Got it. Okay, great. If there are no further questions, may I entertain a motion?
Did we have direction beyond receipt of the report? I don't think
Yeah,
so.
basically, that's all we need.
Move receipt of the report?
And I'll second that.
Vice Chairperson Ellenberg
Yes.
and Chairperson Lee.
Yes, as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisors.
Item 11 has been deferred, so we go straight to our last item today, which is item number 12, receiving the monthly legislative report from the Office of Intergovernmental Relations. I believe we have our Deputy County Executive, Dave Campos, here today. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Lee, President Ellenberg, David Campos, Deputy County Executive. We don't have a written report, we just have an oral report, simply because, as you know, the legislature and the state legislature has not been in session, and so there's nothing significant to report at this point other than the fact that we are in the process of finalizing our internal processes to come back to the board in the near future with recommendations for the next legislative session, including presenting a work plan and recommendations about priorities for the board. We just went through the process of having internal conversations with departments and finalizing that analysis so that we can come back to the board in the near future. The one thing that I would add is that we have our follow-up meeting for the Santa Clara County Caucus. Members of the delegation are having their second meeting, and grateful to President Ellenberg, her staff, for putting that together in mid-December. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you, David. First of all, anybody in public like to speak on this item?
We do not have members on Zoom or in chambers.
Okay, go close the public hearing. Supervisor Ellenberg.
Thanks, David. I'm glad to hear that we are using this time internally to figure out both what our county priorities will be, and also I assume this is the time you're also reaching out to departments with specific thoughts around bills or things that we need to fix or add or eliminate. What do you anticipate the big areas of focus to be in the next session?
And we're still, President Ellenberg through the chair, going through that process. And just so you know, there are three things that we're focusing on as we're speaking with departments. The first one is looking at the legislative policies that the board has adopted. There will be tweaks to those policies. And those are the policies that really guide our ability to take positions on specific legislative matters. So that's the first thing. Secondly, we are focusing on legislative proposals from specific departments. I think that from what we can see preliminarily, areas of focus continue obviously to be behavioral health along the lines of the work that we've done. Based on the feedback from the board and directive from the board, farm worker housing, of course, is a big priority, and that's a big priority for our county executive as well. And then the third piece is the budgetary piece. As you may recall, in the last cycle, we submitted 4 budget requests, and of those 2 were successful. We are hoping, to be honest, to have an ask of each member of our delegation, 11. And so that's one of the reasons why we have engaged our departments early on in this process. We have essentially completed our meetings as of last week. And so this is all happening a few weeks earlier than previously. And the hope is to be able to complete our analysis, present recommendations internally, and then bring those to the board either at the end of the calendar year or early next year, depending on, sort of our conversations with legislators. We would like to have some initial conversations before we come to the board.
Great, thank you. At PSJC this morning, there was a lot of talk around the challenges with the IST process and the Department of State Hospitals' role in treating patients, both in terms of competency restoration and what their continuing obligation is or should be when it's determined that particular individuals will not be restored to competency. We had really great presentations this morning by, I forgot, Melissa and 2 brilliant attorneys from County Council. It's been a long day already, but we'll figure out who they were, and I would encourage you to connect with them and with Kavita around specific IST issues that we might be looking at. The court also was sharing some concerning information about the rates that they can pay court-appointed psychiatrists, which leads to not a lot of psychiatrists desiring court appointment jobs and therefore slowing down the competency evaluation process further. So there might be some joint work that we would want to do with the courts. Sorry, hold on one second. I don't know what I just did to my document, but here we go. Fun fact, learned this morning that Texas just eliminated property taxes for family home childcare providers. As we kind of continue to cobble together all sorts of solutions for childcare, I would just encourage you to check that out. I'm not recommending it at this point, but I think it's certainly worth looking at. And then my last comment is slightly related to the Office of Communications and OPA that falls under your role as a deputy county executive. Specifically with regard to the work that we're doing around diversion for mental health patients with the 3 different tracks and directions. I think that we're one of the only counties, if not the only one, that is modeling that extent of diversionary work, and I think that is well worth highlighting, both for our delegation and through our comms. And I don't know when the last time, certainly before I was on FGOC, we've had direct presentations from the Office of Communications and OPA, but I would be very interested in understanding whether they work from a strategic plan or how they interface with the executive's office and with IGR, because I think those are kind of the 2 biggest places to really think about how we have an intentional, ongoing, really visible communication strategy to drive the narrative in whatever we're talking about. If it's childcare or mental health or farm worker housing or homelessness, I want us to have a very strong, flexible, but strategic plan to have ongoing address of things that we want to sunshine.
If I may, President Ellenberg, through the chair, we are looking into that, and based on prior conversations, are very mindful of the need to do that, to connect the dots between the 2 functions. And it's something that we're incorporating in the work plan, but we also think that there is additional information that needs to be provided beyond the 2, IGR, OCPA, some of the strategic goals of the Office of Communications and Public Affairs, and we look forward to sharing those with the board, and we're in consultation with the county executive
Great.
to make that happen.
Ask the chair if that item could be agendized in the 2024
Yes, absolutely.
calendar, and we'll leave that to
Happy
you
to do
from
so.
there. But
Yes.
I'm interested, and obviously their strategic plan should follow board priorities, but I'd really like to see us elevate that work.
And the one thing that I would add that I forgot to mention is that, as you know, there is new leadership in the state legislature. Our new speaker, who took over a few months ago, and who will be making new committee assignments, and those will probably come up towards the latter part of the calendar year and maybe early next year. But that will have, implications for us, so it's something to keep an eye on. And then, of course, we have a new state Senate pro tem who will also be making committee assignments. So we'll be monitoring those and making sure that we're changing or aligning our strategy in accordance to those changes.
Excellent. And the speaker pro tem is also from the broader Bay Area, and I think that relationship will be an important one for us to build and cultivate as well. So thank you for all of your work, David.
Thank you very much, President Ellenberg.
Yes, thank you so much for the report. As you mentioned, that there's not a lot happening right now in Sacramento since they're on recess. Anything of interest in the federal side that we should talk about?
Well, first of all, thank you to everyone who made themselves available as our main lobbying firm in DC came to meet with the leadership of the county. I think that there's a lot of questions that remain unanswered with the change in the speaker. I think that we're still waiting to see what it all means and you know how things play out with the question of whether or not there's going to be a federal government shutdown still remaining an open question. I think there's more optimism, but that could very well be something that could happen, and so we're going to keep monitoring that, and of course enhancing our engagement at the federal level, and along the same lines that we have with the state, which is one of the reasons why we wanted them to come out here. And as we noted, at some point, we do want to, have a delegation in D.C., but we are monitoring a lot of different issues. And one thing that I will note is that we are in communication with Senator Butler's office. She's there for a year, but we know that there's still a lot of work that she can do, which she can help us, and we're trying to set up a meeting with her office.
Thank you. I think you're right in the sense that since you only have 1 year, this might be the time she might want to accomplish as much as possible during her short time there. So I think this is a good opportunity to try to get something through. And so I think that's very smart to go that way. Since the election of the new speaker, has there been any interesting legislation that has actually passed that of note? Other than I'm all hearing it's just bad news.
A
on the
couple
news,
of
so-
funding efforts have been successful, but we just saw that one of the appropriation bills did not make it. So I think, a lot of optimism in the first few days, but not clear exactly where that goes. One big item that we're looking at is SNAP, which is part of the Farm Bill, and that could have some significant implications to the county. Again, not clear how things are going to go, and his ability to actually cut deals and whether or not that will he will have the freedom to do what the prior speaker couldn't do, especially with the more conservative members of the caucus.
Because all I'm hearing is some of these strange, what you call, proposal to reduce the secretary of this, secretary of that to $1 salaries. Just on the news, I just saw that now the Republican is dropping the IRS, cutting the IRS as a proposal. So a lot of these are more like headline grabbing issues, and frankly, they won't become law, right? It won't get passed Senate or signed by the president. So I'm just trying to see that despite all this headline grabbing issues, I mean, any real legislation being passed since this arrival, or things have been basically
There were a
stuck?
couple of bills that passed, some of the funding bills that passed, but again, the latest one did not pass, so kind of a mixed bag. Still waiting to see what happens. There was more optimism last week, less so today.
All right. Well, with all that great news we have, may I have a motion to receive the report?
So moved with the direction to to agendize a report from the Office of Communications in 2024.
Great. And we will second that. And that's all we have. Let's take the vote.
Vice Chairperson Ellenberg.
Yes.
Chairperson Lee.
Yes, as well. And thank you so much, David. And this takes us to the end of the meeting. Right now, we are scheduled for December 21st. It will be our last meeting for FGOC this year, before the holiday break at 2 p.m. Same place, same channel. Thank you very much, and meeting adjourned. Happy birthday, Megan!